Chapter 2 Kannada-speaking areas during the colonial rule. Division of Kannada-speaking areas during colonial rule. After the decline of Mughal Empire, the important petty regional powers of the south that emerged in the 18th century were Mysore, the Marathas, the Nizams of Hyderabad and the Nawabs of Karnataka. At the same time, the European colonial forces who entered India had to struggle for supremacy against these native powers. While some areas came under the control of the Marathas, others came under the control of the Nizam of Hyderabad and the Nawab of Karnataka. Gradually, the English established their control over these native states. While some areas came under the Bombay Presidency, others came under Madras Province and the Nizam of Hyderabad. The independent native state of Coorg was under the control of Aliri rulers. In this manner, many of the Kannada-speaking regions slipped over from the grounds of the native rulers and came to be ruled by the British. Mysore. Revolt of Mysore province against colonial rule. The emergence of Hyder Ali as the commander of the Mysore army in the latter half of the 18th century posed a threat to the Marathas, the Nawab of Karnataka and the Nizam of Hyderabad. The Marathas and the Nizams allied with the British and fought against Mysore. Subsequently, the Nizam joined hands with the English and fought against the Marathas. In this manner, the English, having made use of the rivalry existed between the local rulers, gradually became victorious against them. In the year 1767, the British, having allied with the Marathas and the Nizam of Hyderabad, attacked Hyder Ali of Mysore. But Hyder Ali became successful in wooing the support of the Marathas and the Nizam of Hyderabad. Later, Hyder Ali, having confronted the British, went as far as Madras. By this, the English were forced to sign the Madras Peace Treaty. With this treaty, the First Anglo-Mysore War came to an end. As per the terms of the treaty, the signatories to the treaty had to mutually help each other in the event of an attack by a third party. However, when the Marathas attacked Mysore, the English, as per the terms of the treaty made earlier, did not come to the rescue of Hyder Ali. By this, Hyder Ali came to the conclusion that the British were not trustworthy. Mahe was a colony of the French and was under the control of Hyder Ali. The British capture of Mahe led to the Second Anglo-Mysore War. This time, the Marathas and the Nizam allied with the British. In 1781, the English army under Akut defeated Hyder Ali in the battle. After the death of Hyder Ali, his son Tippu Sultan continued the war. This war ended with a Mangalore Peace Treaty in 1784.
This led to the Third Anglo-Mysore War. The war, which started in 1790, ended 2 years later in 1792 with the Treaty of Srirangapatna. In this war, Tippu lost heavily. As a result, he not only had to forfeit half his kingdom to the British but had to pay 330 lakh rupees as compensation for the losses incurred. Till such time it was agreed that 2 of his sons were taken hostage by the English. Some regions in Tamil Nadu and Malabar which were under Mysore were taken over by the British. The Marathas got the region up to the Tungabhadra. Ballari, Kadiffa and Doab region of Tungabhadra were given to the Nizam. The British Governor-General, Lord Wellesley, who came to India in 1798, tried to impose the doctrine of subsidiary alliance on Mysore. Tippu, being a decisive enemy of the British, refused subsidiary alliance and made preparations for war. He took measures to face the British and to protect his capital. He engaged the French to train his army. He tried to establish communication with France, Turkey and other countries and sought their help at this time. Tipu's capital, Srirangapatna, was surrounded on all the four sides by the British army. Tipu fought bravely, but died on the battlefield. This has been called the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War. As a result, the state of Mysore was shared by the British and the Nizam, while the region of Old Mysore was handed over to Krishnaraja Vodiyar III. Many of the territories of Coorg which were under Tipu were handed over to the kings of Coorg, the region of Vodiyars in Mysore is a significant chapter in the history of Karnataka. The rule that began with Yadurya and Krishnaraya continued till 1947. Raja Vodiyar, who ruled in the early part of the 17th century, defeated Srirangaraya, representative of the Vijayanagar, captured Srirangapatna and began ruling over it, having made it their capital. Later, the Vodiyars became powerful rulers in region. Kantiruva, Narasaraja and Shikadevaraja were important kings among the early Vodiyars. During the region, the state expanded and saw an overall development. Later, Krishnaraja Vodiyar III ruled for some years. Among the later Vodiyars, the Mysore state under Krishnaraja Vodiyar became renowned as Ramaraj. Mysore state came to be known as the most progressive among the native Indian states during this region. Jaya Chamraja Vodiyar was the last king of this state. Hyderabad, Karnataka region, today's Bidar, Gulbarga, Yadgir and Raichur, which were under the direct rule of the Nizam, have been identified as the regions of Hyderabad, Karnataka. Erstwhile Bidar formed a part of the Deccan province under Emperor Aurangzeb. After the death of Aurangzeb, the entire Deccan province came under the rule of the Nizam. Earlier, the Nizam of Hyderabad was a provincial officer of the Mughal emperor. When Mughal emperor after Aurangzeb became weak, the Nizam of Hyderabad asserted his independence. It is there that the Deccan province came under his control. As a result, Kannada-speaking regions like Bidar, Gulbarga and Raichur came under the rule of the Nizam. The policy of doctrine of lapse introduced by the British met a stiff opposition from the native states. Kittur Rani Channamma, Sangoli Rayana and others were the leaders of this protest. In addition to this, protest against the British took place in Supa, Surapur, Nalgund and Dandeli. The leaders of this protest were Mandargi Bhimrao, Bhaskar Rao Bhave, the Hilgali Beddars, Raja Venkatappa Naika and others. Madras, Karnataka region. In the 19th century, the Kannada-speaking regions of Bellary and South Kannada came under the rule of Madras province. Venkatappa Naik of Ekkeri occupied the region of South Kannada in the early part of the 17th century. Later, he shifted his capital to Bidanur. The Keladi rulers under Venkatappa Naika continued to rule over this region till the middle of the 18th century. The English relations with South Kannada started in 1737. In addition to obtaining permission to trade from Bidanur rulers, in certain places they even gained monopoly to trade in pepper and cardamom. Hyder Ali, after his conquest of Bidanur in 1763, later even acquired Mangalore. He even converted this region into a naval harbour. In 1780, when the British engaged in a battle with Hyder, the commander of Bombay captured Kundapur. As Bidanur fell into the hands of the British, Tipu's army entered the scene. As a result, the British had to retreat. During this period, many areas in South Kannada were reeling under the impact of the Coorg rebellion. On account of the partition treaty that took place in the same year, Mangalore came under British rule. In the year 1862, All the regions north of Kundapur were transferred to Bombay Presidency, and the remaining regions of Bellary and South Kannada came under the rule of Madras Presidency. Belgaum, Bijapur, Dharwad, and some regions of North Kannada were under the rule of Bombay Presidency. After the decline of the state of Vijayanagar, the local rulers of Kannada became independent. Subsequently, the Sultans of Bijapur naturally takes over this region. After the fall of Bijapur in 1686, the region of Kannada came under the rule of the Mughals. Later, it was acquired by the Marathas. As a result of this, the Palagas of Sonda and Bidanur came under the rule of Mughals and offered tributes. Sometime after 1700, the Marathas occupied the region of Kannada. When Hyder Ali occupied Bidanur in 1763 and acquired enormous wealth, he also brought Sonda and the coast areas under him. Due of this, he developed enmity with the Marathas. Tippu, during his war with the English, lost Honavar. After the death of Tippu, the British took possession of Sonda. However, due to its proximity with the regions of Bombay, the North Kannada including Sonda was in 1861 transferred to Bombay. Also under the Mughals, later Puth, Hubli and Dharwad came under the attack of the Marathas. In the subsequent developments, Hubli and Dharwad came under the occupation of Hyder Ali and Tippu. But later the Marathas occupied this region and retained it till 1817. With fall of the Marathas in the same year, these regions came under the English. In 1836, Belgaum was separated from Dharwad. A remarkable event after this was the protest of Naragunda Naik against the English in 1857–58. This has been called the Revolt of Nargund. After the revolt, the English also took possession of Nargunda. Coorg. Coorg, ruled by the Changalvas for about 8 centuries, lost their power by the 17th century. Later it was the Halleri Arasis who came into dominance. They defeated many Naika and Palyagas and came to power by about the 18th century. By the end of 18th century, Coorg came under the rule of Hyder and Tippu. The Halleri Arasis, having lost their territory, became dependent on the British. After the death of Tippu, Halleri chief Viravaraja became the ruler of Coorg. After his death, his queen began to rule as regent. Later, the state was ruled by Lingavaraja. After Lingavaraja, power was received by Chikkavira Raja. In the beginning, he took the resistance of the British. As he was cruel and a tyrant, the British disposed and had him exiled. Later, while he had travelled to England in his tyrant attempt to get back the money deposited by his family, but he died. It is significant to note that he was the first native ruler who had get his foot out of India. Without any bloodshed, Coorg went to the British. Coorg was divided and the region of Lower Coorg was attached to Madras Presidency. Due to this, the peasant in this part got entangled into enhanced revenue exploitation. They arrived at a condition where they borrowed loans from the middlemen to pay revenue. If they were unable to pay the revenue, they had to undergo the suit filed by the government in the courts and the exploitation of the lawyers. At this point of time, a well-wisher of Halleri rulers, Sannyasi by name Swami Parampara, was arrested as he tried to organize the peasant against the British. His follower Kalyana Swami continued the effort of organizing the peasants, was arrested and hanged. This was not made a news. Then the movement was kept alive by projecting Puttaba Sappa as Kalyana Swami. An influential peasant leader, Kadambadi Ramagowda of Amarasalya, a partner of Kalyana Swami, organized struggle against the British. The peasant army in 1837 from Saleh entered Mangalore and hoisted the flag of victory. within the region of Kasargod to Mulkia and from Saleh to Mangalore. For 13 days the peasant activists ruled through their own government. Inside Coorg also there ensued struggle under the leadership of Gadamanya Paya Goda. This struggle was suppressed by the British through the Divans of Coorg. The army came from Madras abated the struggle from Mangalore. The British projected this as a revolt. Some of the important activists of the struggle were hanged to death, while a few were arrested and exiled. This struggle of Lower Coorg and coastal regions is significant as it occurred well before the 1857 struggle. The British ruled over Coorg with much more predominance till independent. In the freedom struggle, Pandiyanda Belayappa, Chipatiyara, Poonacha and others, being influenced by Indian National Congress and Mahatma Gandhi, organized satyagraha against the British. They were not deterred even where they were imprisoned by the British. The satyagraha struggle, which took place by wetting the peasants and the masses in the freedom struggle, has been truly memorable.